Welcome to Daryl's Beekeeping Videos. Today's lesson is on how to make candy boards. Now, candy boards are a cheap insurance policy against starvation in your hives throughout the winter or any time of the year, but typically they're used during the winter months or when it's extremely cold or when your bees don't have any natural food sources such as honey. To make these, all you need is some form of box. In this case, this is a design purpose-made candy board box, and I'll have the dimensions in the final product for you. But basically, it has 1/2 inch mesh wire, and I'll pull it up a little closer here so you can actually see it. And again, I'll have a still photo of it. But basically, this is for an 8 frame. It has a 1/2 inch diameter hole in the front that serves as a vent, as well as a exterior entrance hole. It has the 1/2 inch mesh you can see down here, 1/2 inch wire mesh, and then it has 3/8 inch cleat to protect the mesh and also serve as a place for the cardboard to hold up the sugar. So also what you will need is for this formula, again I'll have the formula for the ingredients in the final product, but basically you need 16 pounds of sugar for this 8 frame model that I'm making. You'll need 3 cups of water, and what I do is I take that and I break that into 2 different batches. So I need 1.5 cups of water and 8 pounds of sugar for each batch. Again, I'll mix up 2 batches so that they are smaller batches so that it's easier to mix up in smaller batches. So again, for each batch, 1.5 cups of water and 8 pounds of sugar. You can use a tablespoon of white vinegar to serve as a mold preservative if you want. You would just divide that in half for each batch. Again, today's video, I'm not going to use that because these are going straight on the hive, and my bees are doing okay with food sources. But I want just to give them a little bit more insurance throughout the winter. The next thing you'll need is you'll need your sugar, you'll need your water, you'll need your candy board, and then what a lot of beekeepers, commercial beekeepers do, or vendors when they do it, is they'll line the bottom of this candy board with paper of some sort, either wax paper, parchment paper, newspaper, and they'll put it right on top of the mesh. I personally do not like that when I do that, when I see that, because in order to get access to the sugar, the bees have to chew through that paper, and what that does is that paper falls to the bottom board, and it allows the small hive beetles to have a place to nest underneath there. So I personally don't like it. So my method involves using this little cleat, as I alluded to earlier, this 3/8 inch cleat, which is basically the thickness of a piece of cardboard and the wax paper and just a little bit more. And basically it serves as bee space as well. And by using this method, once the sugar dries, then you can simply remove this and you don't need that paper, and there's nothing to waste. And the other advantage to this is if the bees don't consume this throughout the winter, I can simply dump this into a bucket and make up a simple sugar mix and feed it to them in a top feeder if I choose to in the springtime. All right, so in order to get started, so all I'm going to do is I'm going to take my box, turn it upside down. I'm going to put my wax paper into the area that's now exposed, and then I'm going to take this shipping cardboard. So all I've done is I've taken one of my cardboard boxes that came that shipped something in it, and I just cut it to the inside dimensions of this area, and it doesn't have to be exact. Again, the sugar's not going to come out, so it's not going to be that big a deal. And then I just hold it in place, and then I flip it upside down, and then I just make sure that the wax paper is centered in it as much as I can. The next thing you're going to need for each batch, you're going to need preferably a metal handled, long handled spoon to help mix up the sugar and the water. The water is just going to add as a binding agent for the sugar. That's all it does. Again, it will evaporate. And then you're going to need about an 8-quart or larger pot or mixing bowl just to mix it together. You're going to mix it together like a dry snowball almost. Next thing you're going to need is you're going to need 3 blocks. And what these serve as, again, I'll have a final photo in the final product for you. These are ventilation holes that allow the bees to come up through from underneath and get access to the sugar a little easier rather than having to work their way up through one of those small squares in the 1/2-inch mesh. It also serves as a ventilation to allow excess moisture to get outside of the hive. All right, so again, so all I'm going to do is I'm going to simply place these in. Again, these are nothing more than 2x4 or 2x3. It doesn't matter, whatever you happen to have. And then by whatever length, it just barely clears this box. So I've got those in place. I've got them in corners. And next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to take my 1.5 cups of water. Again, this is just hot tap water. It doesn't need to boil. The reason you don't want to boil sugar, like some beekeepers will try to tell you, is hot syrup can cause what they call HMF. Again, I'll put a link for it up there, what that is, or an abbreviation of what that is. It's hydroxymethylfurfural, if I remember correctly, but it's bad for honeybees. It's not harmful to humans, but it's bad for honeybees. And you get that through either long temperatures of medium to high temperatures or extremely high temperatures. Again, with the sugar, that is. So I use the no-cook method, which is not harmful for the bees in any way at all. So I've added my 1.5 cups of water, and then I'm going to mix 1 bag of sugar at a time. And again, remember this for each batch, it's 1.5 cups of water and 8 pounds of sugar. And so how convenient that my local grocery store sells the sugar in 4-pound bags, so it's real easy math. So again, I'm just going to mix this up. And you're going to see this become really runny. And again, you don't have to mix it super well. So all you're doing is you're causing the sugar, loose granular pieces of sugar, to just become wet, and then they stick to each other. That's all you're doing. All right, so from there, I'm going to set my bags on the ground. I'll clean those up later. Again, right now it's just mixing in the white granular sugar. And again, the reason you want to use white granular sugar is that's what's best for the bees. Never, ever use any sugar that contains molasses, because the bees can't digest molasses and it's bad for them. So only use white granulated sugar for your bees when you're making up your syrups and your candy boards. Again, so that's all I'm doing is I'm folding it, kind of like you're folding in butter whenever you're mixing dough. Those of you who bake, I don't, but I've watched my wife do it enough times where she folds in the butter. So that's all I'm doing is I'm just kind of mixing it in, and it's going to, again, it's going to have the consistency when I'm done of kind of like a dry snowball. That's what it's kind of going to look like. And again, I'm just kind of stirring it and stirring it. Once I see it, all the dry pockets of sugar are done, the first thing I like to do is I like to set my bowl next to my working surface. I make sure my block is centered on the front entrance hole there. And then I like to block in. That's all I'm doing is I'm scooping it in and then just patting it down. I like to lock in those blocks. So my first few scoops get patted around that just to solidify those blocks. And I think, same thing, I'll do it toward the back. Again, this goes fairly quickly. And with this method, you notice on my table, I've got a plastic shower curtain to protect the table. And this is just one of those folding tables. And I'll just let this sit in my living room for a few days until the sugar dries enough. And then from there, I can remove them from the wax paper and cardboard, and then save those for another year. What I do is I like to make 2 candy boards per hive. I'm in North Carolina, so the temperatures aren't too terribly bad. But again, it's just cheap insurance against starvation. So now that I've got toward my blocks locked in, I can simply scoop the rest of this in a little more quickly. And it's easy formula, easy to do, takes a few days to dry. And then I go on and make my next batch. If you notice in the beginning when I showed you this form, I've got a middle spacer in there inside my box. It goes all the way across and it's stapled from the outside. You don't see that, but it's stapled from the outside in. And then this mesh, wire mesh is stapled to that. And what that does, that holds that mesh a little bit more firmer to the frame. And it also kind of gives me an idea, and again, I'll have the dimensions for you in the final product, but it kind of gives me an idea of where the sugar is going to go. What I do is I like to have bee space on top as well, allow the bees to move around. So again, that was the first batch. You saw how quickly it goes together. So next I'll add my second batch, mix it up. Again, 1.5 cups of sugar and 8 pounds of 1.5 cups of water and 8 pounds of sugar. Again, just mixing it in. Get that first batch of sugar nice and wet, and it makes the second batch of sugar go that much faster as it mixes in. If you accidentally pour in both bags, it's not a big deal. It just takes you a little bit more work to get it, all the dry patches mixed in and broke up. All right. So I'll add my second bag. Again, you can kind of see, I'll see if I can hold it where you can see it a little bit better. Basically, I'm just folding it as I go, folding it, until I get all those dry areas of sugar mixed in with the wet sugar. Again, just kind of twisting and turning as I go. And then periodically using if I see large balls forming in there, then I'll simply use the side of this large metal spoon to kind of break those up. Again, the intent is to get all the dry sugar wet. And again, you don't want it to be too wet, because think about it, the longer it will take, the wetter it is. So again, just 3 cups for the 16 pounds here. And if you're running a 10 frame or 5 frame, then you can adjust your sugar accordingly. What I would do in that case is I would still make up this batch and then make up another batch as you need to. And then if you have any excess, then just set it out on top of some tin foil, and the bees will eat that just as well. Again, this goes a little faster now I have the blocks locked in. So again, now I can just simply dump this straight in and then even it out. And I've got a little bit more in here. And the reason I like using a metal pot or a metal bowl is it's easier. I don't have to, as opposed to a glass system, I don't have to worry about breaking glass or anything like that. Again, just personal preference. So again, I just spread this out. Again, just making sure I have a little bit of gap at the top so the bees can crawl around. Again, I'm just packing it around the blocks. Those blocks will come out here in a minute. Again, they hold their form, the sugar holds its form quickly. So those can be removed. Again, you're not making anything fancy here, you're just feeding the bees. So, you don't have to be too fussy with it. It doesn't have to be too smooth. And I spread everything out, and you can kind of see, I don't know if you can see it from the video from that far away. I'll take and scrape off the excess sugar. and you can kind of see that middle spacer board that I was telling you about is there. Again, it just kind of gives me an idea. Over the years, I've kind of adjusted the height on that to where it kind of gives me an idea of when to stop with sugar. From there, I can simply take my blocks, pull them straight up, and then what I personally like to do is I simply like to just roll over the edges a little bit, just to firm those up a little bit, and prevent any major chunks of sugar from going down in the hive all at once. So I just pull it up and then just kind of roll back over the edges a little bit. And then from there, in order to keep this dry, you can see on my previous two that I've made, as I've simply just put them on there at an angle. So I just simply pull this back, and as I pull it, I'm reaching underneath to make sure I hold on to that cardboard and wax paper, and then I just simply place it on top of the next one, just to make sure that I have a little bit of air ventilation that goes back and forth. If you had some cross sticks or boards that go across there to add extra ventilation, you could do that if you choose. But that's all there is to it. So again, it's just a simple formula. Again, 16 pounds of sugar, 3 cups of water. If you want to add a tablespoon of white vinegar or any type of vinegar, most of the time we use white vinegar though as a mold preservative. That's all there is to it. Let it dry for a few days, and I'll put this straight on the hive, and my bees will be safe from starvation throughout the winter. And then as I go through the winter, maybe about January, right now it's November 28th, I'll probably check my hives again about first part of January, and then maybe again the first about mid-January. Just lift up top, see what the food stores are, and see how much these are, how well these are doing. Sometimes the bees barely touch them. Sometimes they'll go through one in a month or so. So again, thanks for watching and enjoy your day.